They were there yesterday morning. Every morning before that for 3 years. And then this morning the ledge was completely empty and the silence where they used to be felt like a different kind of quiet. You noticed it for 1 second. Then you kept walking. That 1 second is exactly what this is about. Because the pigeons did not leave without a reason. And whatever drove them away is still there. Most people have a version of this moment. A familiar corner that used to have birds. A rooftop that felt different one day without any obvious explanation. Your brain registered the absence for a fraction of a second and then filed it away as nothing. But here is what that fraction of a second was actually telling you. The environment in that space had already crossed a threshold. The pigeons responded to it before anything visible changed. And you were standing in the middle of it without knowing. That is where this begins. Pigeons are not what most people think they are. The assumption that they are opportunistic, low-awareness birds with no real sensitivity to their environment is exactly wrong. Pigeons have navigated cities for decades using internal systems that operate far beneath the level of conscious observation. They read pressure changes, low-frequency vibration, spatial memory, and air quality simultaneously, processing all of it in real time. They do not investigate when something crosses their threshold. They leave. Quietly. Collectively. Without hesitation. And this is the part that most people never sit with long enough. When a pigeon flock abandons a location they have used for years, they are not reacting to something that is about to happen. They are reacting to something that has already begun. The shift already occurred. They simply registered it before you did. But that is only the first layer of what this behavior reveals. The timing of the abandonment tells you more than the abandonment itself. Pigeons are creatures of extreme routine. They return to the same roosting spots across seasons, across years, through noise and weather and the constant disruption of city life. A break in that routine does not happen gradually. It happens inside a single window, most often between dusk and the following morning. One evening the ledge is full. By the next morning it is completely empty. If you have ever witnessed this transition, even without fully registering it, what you were seeing was the moment after the threshold was crossed. Not before. The pigeons were already gone because whatever shifted in that space shifted sharply enough to trigger an immediate collective response. That speed matters. A gradual departure over several days points to a slow environmental change, something the flock adjusted to incrementally. But an overnight disappearance points to something different. Something that crossed a line fast enough that staying was no longer an option. And here is where it becomes more specific than most people expect. Pigeons do not abandon locations because of noise. Cities are loud and pigeons adapted to urban noise centuries ago. They do not leave because of cold or rain. They have roosted through conditions that emptied streets of every human being. What triggers a full abandonment of a long-standing location is a shift beneath the surface of normal. Infrasound, which is low-frequency vibration operating below the range of human hearing, is one of the most powerful drivers of pigeon displacement. Underground pressure changes, structural stress in load-bearing surfaces, shifts in electromagnetic fields near power infrastructure. These are not abstract forces. They are measurable physical realities that pigeons register through their bodies before any instrument positioned on that street would detect them at a meaningful level. You walked past that empty ledge. An instrument standing beside you would have detected nothing unusual. The pigeons had already been gone for hours. But this is only one part of what is shifting. Watch where they go when they leave. A displaced flock does not scatter evenly across a city. They compress. They move into a secondary location, often within a quarter mile of where they were, and they concentrate there in numbers that feel slightly wrong for that space. They are not fleeing the city. They are avoiding one specific zone within it. And that compression is the second signal, the one almost nobody reads correctly. When you see an unusual density of pigeons somewhere they do not normally gather in those numbers, the instinct is to look at them and wonder why they are there. That is the wrong question. The right question is what space they came from. what they left behind them. Because the gathering is not the signal. The empty space that produced the gathering is the signal. And that empty space is not empty in the way a normal space is empty. Something is still present in it. You just cannot see it from where you are standing. And here is where the pattern stops feeling like coincidence. It is the middle of the afternoon and the starlings above the intersection are moving wrong. Not dramatically wrong. Just slightly off. The formation that normally flows like one connected shape is breaking at the edges, fragmenting into smaller groups that cannot agree on a direction. Each fragment corrects, rejoins briefly, then fractures again. Most people walking below would not register it. But you are watching now. And what you are seeing is a species with a completely different sensory and social architecture than the pigeon, responding to the same environmental zone in its own way. The sparrows in that same block are doing something different but equally specific. Their movement pattern, which is normally confident and purposeful, short direct flights between fixed points, has become erratic. Broken. They are making flights that go nowhere, landing briefly, lifting again without the usual intention. A sparrow that cannot settle is a sparrow that cannot find a stable reference point in its environment. And when sparrows and starlings and pigeons are all behaving unusually within the same geographic zone at the same time, you are no longer looking at isolated behavioral quirks. You are looking at a convergence. And that convergence points at one location. This is where the evidence becomes harder to look away from. There are documented cases, studied and recorded across multiple research contexts, of animal displacement preceding significant environmental events. Seismic activity. Major weather shifts. Infrastructure failures. In these records, the animals involved were not reacting to the event itself. They were reacting to precursor signals that arrived hours before any instrument registered the event at a measurable threshold. Pigeons appear in these records consistently. Not as symbols or omens. As biological sensors with sensitivity ranges that operate below the floor of standard human detection equipment. The infrasound connection is the most documented. Low-frequency vibration travels through ground and structure long before its source becomes visible or measurable at the surface. Pigeons detect it through pressure-sensitive cells in their bodies. When that vibration crosses a threshold, the response is not investigation. It is immediate departure. The biology does not allow for hesitation because hesitation in the presence of that signal has historically meant not surviving what comes next. This is not mythology. This is a sensory system that has been functioning and refining itself for far longer than the cities these birds now live in. But here is the layer that changes how you read all of this. When pigeons return to an abandoned location, the manner of their return is its own signal. A normal return happens gradually. One or two birds appear first, sitting at the outer edge of the structure rather than the center. They stay for a short time and leave. This repeats across 1 to 3 days. Then the larger group follows and the location resettles into its normal pattern. This is how pigeons return when the disruption has passed and the environment has stabilized back below their threshold. But sometimes the scouts appear and the group never follows. The same 1 or 2 birds land at the edge, sit briefly, and leave without the flock ever returning. This pattern, scouts arriving and retreating without settlement, means the environment has not resolved. Whatever crossed the threshold is still present at a level the flock assessed on return and rejected. The space is still producing a signal they will not tolerate. A ledge that stays empty after scouts have visited is not a ledge where the birds simply found somewhere better. It is a ledge above a space that has not returned to normal. And if the sparrows in that block are still fragmented and the starlings above it are still breaking formation, then the convergence has not resolved either. That space is still telling something to every creature sensitive enough to receive it. You have passed places like this. Most people have. A corner that used to have birds and now does not temporarily, but consistently. A rooftop that feels quieter than the surrounding streets in a way that has no obvious explanation. A stretch of pavement where the usual urban bird activity simply stopped one day and never fully returned. Your instinct flagged at once. Your brain moved on. The pigeons flagged it too. They flagged it with their absence. And unlike your brain, they did not move on. They stayed away. Here is what stays with you after all of this. The ledge above that intersection in your city, the one that used to be full every morning, the one that went quiet one day without explanation. You noticed it for 1 second. That 1 second was your nervous system doing exactly what the pigeons did. Registering a signal from an environment that had already changed. The difference is that you filed it away and kept walking. The pigeons did not keep walking. And they have not come back. The next time you pass a place where birds used to be and no longer are, you will not file it away in 1 second. You will stop. You will look at where they went. You will notice whether the other birds in that zone are moving the way they should. And you will understand that the absence you are standing in front of is not silence. It is information. Delivered by creatures whose entire survival has depended on reading exactly this kind of shift long before it becomes visible to anything else. They did not leave because of nothing. They never do. And now neither will you.